What's up guys, welcome back to my F122 MyTeam career mode. Today it's round 2 from the Jeddah Corniche circuit in Saudi Arabia. If you missed the first episode at Bahrain, make sure to go and check that out before you watch this one. Don't want to give any spoilers away, but it was an interesting race and probably a better result for our team than we were expecting, with some of the top guys kind of out of position. First things first, let's take a look at the activities. It's back-to-back races here between Bahrain and Jeddah, so just a couple of days in order to slide something in. No particularly great options, no resource points or anything like that coming in, but let's do that marketing strategy conference, get a little bit more acclaim for the team, move us on towards those next sponsors to get some more cash coming in. Now on to the R&D and facilities side of things. After we had that pit problem in Bahrain, I think we are going to spend this $1 million here upgrading the equipment for our pit crew. We don't want that costing us results later down the season if they keep making mistakes like that. It cost us probably about 3 or 4 seconds, so I think that's definitely worth the cost there. We've got 1400 resource points. We had a really good practice session in Bahrain, so this is going to allow us to put some more stuff on the car in time for probably Miami, I would think, in a couple of race time. There is a couple of minor upgrades we can fit in within this next 2 weeks before Australia, and most things should be on probably by Imola and definitely by Miami, even if we get a fail. So let's take a look at this weight redistribution upgrade here for the energy cells. We're going to take that'll be on in time for the Australian Grand Prix, which is next episode, provided it doesn't fail. We really want to do this beam wing upgrade as well for the rear downforce, but just need to wait a couple of days for those Venturi tunnels to come in. Currently up to our limit on developments.
Our new parts have completed without issue. They'll be on the car, ready for the next race weekend.
So let's see, the Venturi tunnels do complete just before Jeddah, so we are going to spend this 492 resource points here on the rear beam wing, which is going to give us a little bit more stability at the back end of the car, and that one's going to come in before Australia as well, so a good couple of upgrades coming on before the next race. But this is the car we're kind of stuck with for Jeddah, so hopefully we can get a better result than we got last time. First things first though, the new Pirelli Hot Lap system. This is going to be our first iteration of this throughout our career mode, where you take one of the supercars onto the F1 track. We're choosing an average speed zone here. This is my second attempt, so it's essentially the first half of Sector 2 around the Jeddah Corniche circuit. Much different, this hairpin, compared to the Formula 1 cars. To have to take it at a much lower speed, obviously no downforce on these cars, and down into second gear, flick it round as much as possible, try and maintain the rear end, and we get just around about 99.5 miles an hour there through the average speed zone. Not quite enough for the gold, but we unfortunately didn't manage to improve on that. So that 99.6 is going to be what we get. It's going to be silver, so it's some decent acclaim. Anyway, so now on to practice here in Jeddah. First thing I want to show is the track acclimatization program. This has been in my team since the beginning, but the thing I did notice with this one is the gates are way smaller now. So getting those purple corners and getting the purple optimal line around the track, and of course carrying the speed, is ever more difficult than it was. But you see here the Jeddah circuit, it's pretty quick, very close to the walls here through Sector 1, especially in this boat of a car. We unfortunately run wide there, which is going to invalidate the lap and kind of ruin this practice program. But I kind of just wanted to show off a little bit of Jeddah in the day. It's not something you see all that often. Obviously qualifying and the race both take place at night, so completely different lighting around the track, and it does actually look really good in the daylight. So maybe we could possibly have a day race here at some point, because the views around are kind of exquisite. Right on the Gulf, you get a really good view of the water. There is a few drone cams around here as well, which give you kind of a sense of scale of just how large the track is. Second longest track on the calendar, behind Spa, which is signified by the number of laps. And you kind of have to take a bit of a weird line here around 25 and 26 in order to get these gates. And also, obviously, you have to generate a hell of a lot of points to get a bit of a lock-up into the last corner, which is going to give us red on turn 27. But over the course of practice, we do manage to perfect that with our second lap. Just a few green corners there that we're going to need to look at, making sure we can improve those. Unfortunately, a little bit of front wing damage picked up as well. And of course, the fuel use practice program, making sure we're not burning too much fuel throughout the lap. Really good drive around that final corner, and you see the light goes purple even though we're not technically in the purple section of the graph display, but it is going to get us there, is going to give us a perfect program for that. And we actually managed to perfect all of the programs, so a perfect practice there for us in Jeddah, which is going to give us plenty of resource points as we now move on to qualifying for the second round of the season here in Jeddah, second running of this race. Obviously we had the contest between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton last season. I don't think we'll be fighting with those guys, but if we can get a good result here, it's possibly going to kind of springboard us through the season, ideally. As you move on to Q1 now, managed to get the nose in, and here you see the difference between the daylight and the night. Kind of makes the corners a little bit more blind when you don't have that natural light filtering through all of these walls here in Sector 1. A little bit of traffic in front, but I think that we're going to have just enough of a gap up to Alex Albon ahead of us in order to not compromise our lap, as we are going to close on him now at the end of Sector 1. Albon pulls off to the side, steal a little bit of slipstream from him, getting an extra mile an hour maybe down into the hairpin. We get a little hefty on the brakes and a bit of under rotation and just miss the start of the apex, but we do manage to drag the car in before the end of quite a long corner. Now into the second sector through the quick right left chicane, I should say, at the start of Sector 2, and here we've got this newly positioned, let's say, DRS zone to reflect more closely real life round the very, very fast left-right chicane under the bridged building, and then onto the second DRS zone as Sergio Perez goes top of the timesheets for now with a high 1 minute 31. Not a lap I think we're going to be challenging, but it's good to get a benchmark of whereabouts the AI is. Round turn 27, again a bit of under rotation, run a little wide away from the apex, and then down into a third back-to-back DRS zone. So DRS here is going to be extremely powerful, and we're actually only 7/10 away from Sergio Perez on that first run, so a pretty good lap there, a 32.6. So we're P14, but still a couple of guys yet to put laps in. But either way, off that first run, we are going to be safely in, but we are going to have to go again. Everyone else is going to improve. Obviously, Valtteri Bottas puts his time in there, jumps up to P5. So just Mick Schumacher now to come over the line, and he's going to jump up to P14. So it does put us right on that cutoff, just ahead of the Aston Martin pair of Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll. Now just 42 seconds left here in Q1, and we're going to go again, see what we can do in terms of our delta. A little earlier on the brakes, but it allows us to get the nose in a bit better on turn 1 and 2, carry a little bit more speed around there. And as we get a better exit, we're going to match our delta from the first lap, so that braking a bit earlier didn't really cost us anything. Aggressive round turn 4, but we still lose a little bit of time in our delta, so we really hooked that Sector 1 up the first time round, as we run a little wide at the end of Sector 1 here, but carry quite a lot of speed and over that inside curb, and we managed to keep that delta at just plus a 1/10.5, but we did make a couple of mistakes later on in the lap, so if we can improve those, that's going to help us with our delta times. We drop now down to P17. Round the hairpin, a slight kiss on the wall, but we managed to maintain the speed, now up 3.5 on our delta. Into this quick chicane again, we get that slight bit of under rotation and lose a little bit of time on the way in, so just a 1/4 of a second up now, the advantage, but it's extremely close towards the bottom end of the grid. A couple of tenths could make all the difference, as now we drop to P19 as Lance Stroll improves. And Marcus Armstrong as well, our Kiwi teammate, goes ahead of us up into P19, so we're P20. This lap needs to count, and it needs to be a good one, as we hug an inside line. Again, a little bit of a kiss on the wall, just hugging a bit too much of an inside line. Let's come into this last corner, much better on the brakes this time. The nose bites in much easier, and we're delta now growing all the time, 1/2 second up on our lap. And is it going to be enough to get us out of Q1 for the first time this season? It is! We're P14. So we hook the lap up there at the end of Q1, and it's going to progress us to Q2. Marcus managed to do it in the last race, and we've done it here. So each time we've had one car up in Q2. Unfortunately, Marcus Armstrong out there in 21st, so he's going to be on that back row of the grid along with Nicholas Latifi. The second Williams of Alex Albon also out, along with Esteban Ocon, Daniel Ricciardo and Lance Stroll. So none of the big guns dropped out, but one car from 4 different teams joining the Williams boys there. As we now jump up into Q2, Yuki Tsunoda setting a purple lap at the top of the timesheets as of now. Just coming towards the end of our first lap. This isn't going to be a great one. We are on used tyres here. We want to try and save a set of softs for the race. So we're going to burn up some used tyres, get a decent delta time on, see whereabouts this lap can put us. Max Verstappen just ahead of us goes fastest with a 30.7. And we're a full 2 seconds behind that with a 32.8. So we've lost a decent chunk of time to what we managed in Q1. But like I say, used tyres, so we don't get all of the traction and things that we need. And there you see Max Verstappen top, and we are currently P11, but still 4 guys left to put in their times. Once they all cross that timing beam, they are going to drop us down to P14. So just a minute left here in Q2. Let's go again. We're going to have to find time here, and we get a really good turn 1 and 2 this time. Early on the power, squeeze it on, just stay close to that wall there on turn 3. We're already 3 tenths up on our old delta. Aggressive through turn 4, right over the outside curb. Even though it's a little bouncier this year than it has been before, we're already 7 tenths up on our first lap. So these new tyres really helping, but we get a little kick of oversteer and we have to back right off the throttle. But it does allow us to carry that bit more speed there through the end of Sector 1. And to keep it off the curbs and maintain this 7 tenths advantage. And we're over half a second up on Schumacher, who's currently P12, as we sweep around the far hairpin at the other side of the track, maintaining this gap of about 7 or 8 tenths. Into the hairpin, the nose bites this time, and we just clip that curb on the inside there to carry as much speed as possible. Sergio Perez goes fastest again, this time with a 130.6, but we're a second up on our delta. This is going to put us somewhere in the 31s if we can maintain this lap, and that might be good enough to somehow, some miracle, put us up into Q3. We get a good flick there through the quick chicane at the end of Sector 2, the start of Sector 3, and the delta is now 1.2 seconds. Making a huge gain on our first lap. If we can get this last corner right, just a bit of under rotation, have to get off the brakes, but still manage to get the nose in. And that delta's going to jump up to about 1.5 seconds, so a huge lap coming in here. Absolutely nailing it when we need to. It's a 31.8, and it's going to put us 6th, and we make it through to the top 10 shootout. Into Q3 in just our second race. See here, Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen topping the timesheets for Red Bull. And we're going to be quicker than Charles Leclerc, though he didn't come out for a second lap, so it's not entirely accurate. Lando Norris there in P11, just missing out, along with Kevin Magnussen, Guan Yu Zhou, and Pierre Gasly. As just coming now to the end of our first flying lap in Q3. Lewis Hamilton sets a purple time, which is pretty good, because I think about half the grid so far have put times in, but Charles Leclerc immediately beats that with a mid-130 or 30.6. And again, we're in the 32s for our first run. And again, we're on used tyres, but there's plenty of time in that lap to find. The only person we're currently quicker than is Mick Schumacher in the Haas, as we've got Verstappen against Leclerc at the front, just 0.03 of a second separating them. Verstappen finding all his time in that first sector, so possibly running a bit more downforce on that Red Bull car. And maybe that's going to cost him a little bit in the race, might make it difficult to overtake if he does lose that lead. Now, coming on to our final lap here in Q3. Seeing what we can do. We got a pretty good line here through turn 1 and 2 the first time round, so we break that a little bit earlier, but managed to carry a bit more speed into the corner. And we find another 1/10 of a second. Make that 2 tenths on the exit as we hook the car up perfectly. A lot more grip now down on the tarmac. And we found another couple of tenths, already 4 tenths up. These new tyres really helping us out as we flick the car through the left and rights of Sector 1. Get close to the wall there, allows us to open up the end of the sector, riding over the curbs on the outside, and we're 8 tenths up on our first run. So the new tyres really paying dividends there in that first sector. Get down well on the brakes into 4th gear, round the hairpin, 1 second up on our delta, just about to keep it out of the wall on the exit, using the full width of the track. We have to make a small correction on the steering, getting the nose in there to the quick chicane at the start of Sector 2. And it's now a 1.2 second delta that we're looking at. This hopefully is going to jump us over somebody. I don't think we're going to be fighting the Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bulls, but we've maybe got a chance to jump the likes of Schumacher, Alonso and Bottas. as we're now still 1.2, almost 1.3 seconds up, but we lose a little bit of time through the quick chicane at the start of Sector 3, and that's going to cost us a few hundredths, a few thousandths, all the way down here into turn 27. Hard on the brakes, slight under rotation, still get the nose in, and it's 1.4, 1.5 seconds up as we come to the line. It's going to be a 31 again, and it's a 31.3. So where does that put us? We're P8. So we did manage to jump a couple of the guys in front of us. We're not fighting with the leaders. I mean, we're kind of out of position in P8 as it is. But that's a stunning qualifying in just our second race of the season, getting through into Q3. We've absolutely nailed the setup or something on the car and just found pace in it that really shouldn't be there. Remember, Marcus on that back row of the grid, so we'll be hoping to see if we can get some good points here in Jeddah.
So here we are then, welcoming you today to one of the jewels of the Arab world, Jeddah. One of the biggest cities in Saudi Arabia, second only to Riyadh, gateway to Mecca, and one of the biggest ports in the region. And now, host to the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. So let's take a look at the topographical map of the Jeddah Street Circuit. As you can see, a number of challenging corners for the drivers to master here. We'll see just how much the teams have benefited from their time spent in practice this weekend. And like many street circuits, this track has the potential to punish drivers that get it wrong. Let's hope we avoid any safety cars today. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. An immense lap from Carlos Sainz yesterday puts him in pole position, and it's Charles Leclerc in P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Perez, Hamilton, George Russell, and Bottas. Epiphany, Fernando Alonso, Mick Schumacher, and Lando Norris. Verstappen, they've taken a grid penalty. Magnussen, Guan Yu Zhou, and Gasly. Tsunoda, Vettel, Esteban Ocon, and Alex Albon. Ricciardo, Stroll, Armstrong, and Nicholas Latifi. And now it's time to head down to the track. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box. Ant, it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into turn one, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
So the eagle-eyed among you there no doubt noticing Max Verstappen has a 10-place grid penalty for a component change after qualifying the car on pole in Q3. So that's going to jump us up a space. So we're going to be starting here P7 lofty heights in this kind of boat of a car. And we managed to get the lineup on the grid right this time, a purple lineup. So this is going to give us half a meter of an advantage as we run down into turn one. But the cars around us significantly quicker as we get ready for the lights here to go out. It's 5 lights. And away we go in Jeddah. It's another decent start, but a bit of wheel spin there just at the end of the first phase. And Bottas and Alonso get down the inside. We back off on the run down into Q1 just to avoid damage on the car. We're running simulation damage. We don't want to get any contact here on lap 1 as we squeeze Mick Schumacher around the inside of turn 2. And that's going to put us back up into P8, but we've lost that place to Alonso, who's fighting now with Bottas in front of us, and that's going to slow them both down. But that also means we have to kind of back it out there through the exit of turn 4, not wanting to run into the back of the Spaniard or the Finn. And by sacrificing turn 4, it's going to ruin the rest of sector 1 for us. We're just not carrying the same sort of speed. A heavy car doesn't like turning in, grabbing those apexes, and we're already dropping back about a second from the guys in front, showing the pace of their cars. But we're managing to hold position here over Mick Schumacher and Lando Norris behind us. We're still in the points as we come into Sector 2. So I'd say that classes as a pretty good start, even if we have lost a position. It's only the one we gained from Verstappen. But here you see now Mick Schumacher coming side by side with us down this back straight. And he's going to try and move into the fast chicane at the start of Sector 3. We hold the inside line. We run a little wide, force Mick slightly out of road. And that's going to give Lando a run on him, and he's going to get right on the back of us now on the run down into turn 27, the final corner of this first lap. No DRS now though, so he's not going to monster us down this straight. We park it in the middle of the road, and Lando just has nowhere to go. And we managed to get into turn 27 and end the first lap. Still in P8, so a good lap so far, but can we hold these guys off for the rest of the race? As we move on to lap 2, we've managed to pull a little bit of breathing room through turn 27. Magnussen and Norris fighting behind us, but it's not going to compromise us into turn 1 and 2. As we look back at the race start from on board with the leaders, Carlos Sainz gets a decent start from pole position. Remember, just one Red Bull up at the front with Sergio Perez, who looks towards the outside, and that's going to open up the inside for Lewis Hamilton, who dives up into third place, and he's going to challenge Charles Leclerc here. And round turn 3, Leclerc just manages to squeeze him out. Hamilton tries the outside of turn 4, but Leclerc manages to cover that off as well and maintain a 1-2 for Ferrari. Now on to the end of lap 2, you can see here, we've pulled a couple of seconds, but there's a yellow flag in front of us, and what's that for? It's Valtteri Bottas, the Alfa Romeo driver. He seems to have some sort of problem. He's going very slowly as Fernando Alonso now gets past into 6th. And there we are, coming through into 7th place, and there's a big puff of smoke from the Ferrari engine. Even with their huge durability start, the Ferrari engine's not managed to make it past turn 2 as they're one of the Haas pits. And that's going to put Max Verstappen up into the points, into P10. So a free place for us now, up into P7, as DRS enabled here at the start of lap 3. But we've dropped 2.5 seconds back from Fernando Alonso, and he's kind of in no man's land as he's another couple of seconds back from George Russell. We get a big kick out of turn 2, and right behind us we see Norris, Magnussen and Verstappen. Max is going to get down the inside into the fast hairpin. Magnussen gives him space, and that's going to put the Red Bull up into P9, so just one more blocker behind us of Lando Norris before we've got this rapid Red Bull coming at us at some speed. On to the end of lap 4 though, and at the front the Ferraris are starting to fight. Charles Leclerc has got on the back of Carlos Sainz, and he's going to be pushing him through this DRS zone here, all the way down into turn 27. Can the Monegasque make a move on his teammate as he goes to the outside? He's going to be later on the brakes, I think, here, as he's going to be able to carry more speed on the outside of the corner. Sainz gives him space, squeezes him up a little bit to the exit wall, but that's going to give Leclerc the lead, and he's going to have the DRS to defend down into turn 1. So a great move from the Ferrari driver after his P2 last time out. And right behind them, we've got the 2 Mercedes and the Red Bull of Sergio Perez. Perez behind Lewis Hamilton, and he's going to have the DRS here for a run down into turn 1. So we could see multiple moves up at the front of the grid right at the same time. Perez gets down the outside. Hamilton's going to try and fight this back, but he's not going to have the line here. George Russell just hanging behind, hoping something kicks off and he can maybe steal a place. They're going to run side by side down into turn 4. And Hamilton's just going to have to back out of that as Perez manages to squeeze his way through and up onto the podium for Red Bull. And in the other Red Bull now, Max Verstappen's managed to get on the back of Lando Norris at that exact same point at the start of lap 5. And Verstappen with the DRS is going to come down the outside into turn 1. I'm not sure there's much Norris can do about this. Verstappen squeezes him onto the curb on the apex, and that's going to force Lando to kind of give that place up and opens him up possibly to Kevin Magnussen behind. But that blocker we had, we don't have it anymore, and Verstappen is coming.
By around a second a lap. Here's some information on Russell for you. They seem to have an issue.
Information there from Mark, from our engineer. George Russell 5 seconds down the road, but he's got some kind of problem. And you see here now, he's coming under pressure at the end of lap 7 from Fernando Alonso. He runs wide into turn 1, and you only need to give one opportunity to the double world champion. And the Spaniard in the Alpine now up into P5. So a great move there.
This is brilliant. You're taking 2.5 seconds out of them each lap.
Checking up there with Mark what's happening with George Russell. No change on his engine problem, whatever it is, but we are taking 2.5 seconds out of the Mercedes man each lap. But now Verstappen has caught up to us as well, just 3/4 of a second behind. We get it all wrong through that chicane. It's going to compromise our exit, and here comes Max Verstappen in the Red Bull down this back straight with the DRS. He's going to get past quite easily. We don't fight him too hard. There's no point trying to hold off a Red Bull for 18 laps. And the job now is just try and stick as close as we can to him, try and steal some DRS from the Red Bull before he finally gets out of range. And he's going to come up to George Russell as well as we swing it around this turn 27 at the end of lap 7. Didn't quite get it right, but we're close enough to stay within the DRS. But Verstappen also has that rear wing open as he's now close enough to George Russell. So if we can get on the back of the Red Bull driver, that might help slingshot us almost past the Mercedes of our fellow Brit. As Verstappen now on the run down to turn 4 is so close to George Russell. Let's see now from his onboard, he just gets a better drive through 4, but he has to back out of it through the quick right-hander. And that's going to drop him off the back of the Mercedes a little bit. And it's kind of going to open it up to us, possibly. We might be able to get on the back here of the reigning world champion. Just 3/4 of a second behind him as Verstappen's now going to have a look into the hairpin. Russell goes defensive, and there's just no way around for the Dutchman. And the Mercedes parked kind of perfectly there in the middle of the track. There's only really one line around that corner unless you're already alongside before you get there. And just nothing Verstappen can do. But look, we're right on the back of these two now. George Russell's going extremely slowly and holding up the Red Bull. And that's possibly going to open up an opportunity for us. But here goes Verstappen again down this back straight. He likes this move through the DRS zone. He has to close that rear wing to avoid going into the wall, but opens it up again to make the move into the quick hairpin. And that's going to compromise Russell. This might be the opportunity we need. We're not the quickest car in a straight line, but we're both going to have the DRS here, and we're going to deploy a little bit of the battery. Russell doesn't go defensive early enough, and we get down the inside on the run down into 27. Slight lockup. We almost go into the back of Verstappen. Just managed to get the car slowed down and park it on the apex. Nowhere for Russell to go. And that's going to put us back into that P7 that Verstappen took off as the lap prior. As we come on to lap 9 now. We're still holding position here in P7 in the points. So looking like a good race so far, but it's whether we can maintain this for the other 16 laps. We get a big kick there on the exit of turn 2, and that's going to drop us out of the DRS range of Verstappen. So we can't steal some of that rear wing opening from the Red Bull to pull us towards Fernando Alonso. On to lap 11 now, and Charles Leclerc is in from the lead. So the leader's beginning to pit here. Charles Leclerc comes in for Ferrari. Going onto those hard tyres. It's a pretty good stop from the Scuderia, and it's going to get him back out ahead of us, which is a little bit concerning. And right behind him, we've also got Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen all coming into the pits, all putting on those hard tyres. Good stop for Mercedes. They're going to get Lewis back on track, and Fernando as well in the Alpine, and he's managed to stay ahead of Verstappen, so a good job by the Alpine crew there to match the Red Bull guys. And these three are going to come out all in a conga line just as they went in. And you see they're just coming down the pit straight, the McLaren of Lando Norris, who's going to get ahead of all three of them. Lando, of course, yet to stop, still on those medium tyres he started the racing, but that might cost these guys a little bit of time. It's going to slow them all up. But those pit stops ahead of us are going to promote us up into P4. As we come at the end here of lap 12, we see Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez going to be coming in. So can Ferrari do 2 stops in 2 laps and get them pretty equal? And maybe Carlos Sainz can do an overcut on Charles Leclerc like he managed last race in Bahrain. Is the Ferrari man now heading down the pit lane? But where is Charles Leclerc? Because he is coming. As Perez is in, you see Leclerc going past down the pit straight. A good stop for Red Bull. They're going to get him on those hard tyres as well. So all of the leaders now have pit. As Carlos Sainz coming round turn 1 and 2. There's Charles Leclerc. And he's just going to hold the position. Squeezes Carlos slightly into the wall. And maintains the lead this time. Doesn't lose a place to his Spanish teammate. And just now on lap 14, the guys just behind us. With Perez, Hamilton and Max Verstappen's in there as well now. And he's going to try and move around the outside of Hamilton through turn 27. These two had some encounters in the real-life race last season. And they're going to go side by side into turn 1. Both with the DRS, both that rear wing open. The Mercedes is going to fight back. A little unsteady under braking. And Verstappen's going to get a little bit of a better line through turn 2. Slightly squeezes Lewis out, but just about leaves enough space. And these two are going to go side by side into turn 4 now as well. But Lewis has kind of no option but to back out of this. Red Bull just gets better traction there through turn 5, through the quick right-hander. And that's going to put Red Bull into a 3-4 once we make our pit stop, which we're going to do right here now at the end of lap 17. Went long on the medium tyres. Slow it down, get into the pit lane. Pretty good. Remember our box all the way at the end. As Verstappen now sets a fastest lap behind us, chasing after teammate Sergio Perez. We get a perfect entry into our pit box. And we get a front wing change. But it's stuck. It won't come off. So for the second race in succession, we're going to get an issue on our front wing. The slow pit stop, and that's going to cost us time at least, maybe even positions. We do go on these soft tyres though, with everyone else on the hard, so this is going to definitely give us an advantage on track. And there we see Kevin Magnussen right in front of us in P8. So the slow pit stop has cost us a position to the Haasman. We're going to have to make that move on track now against a quicker car. But you see just how much grip we have here through this first sector. The gap at 2 seconds, and it's going to start really coming down as soon as these tyres are up to heat. Even cold, they have just way better grip than the one mediums we were on. And we gain a couple of tenths there through that first sector. That should have nicely warmed these soft tyres up. As we swing it round the hairpin, we can just carry so much more speed. And we take another 3 tenths out. And on to the next lap, we've got that gap all the way down to half a second. Managing to throw the car around pretty well, burn a bit of ERS, get as close to the Dane as we possibly can. We can just keep a tighter, faster line here through the hairpin. But Magnussen gets a better exit. We have a bit of a moment. We have to release the throttle. But a big gap back to Ricciardo behind us, so no threat from behind. We can really go all out here at Kevin Magnussen. As now we're going to have the DRS down this back straight. Verstappen's favourite overtaking spot. But I don't think we're going to be close enough or have enough straight line speed to make a move here into the quick chicane. We have to close the DRS to not get too close and a little unsighted into this. But we carry more speed through the exit, run it a little wide just for an increase in the amount of speed we carry. We'll sacrifice a little bit of distance. We're going to try a move here on Magnussen down the outside. But he closes the door, covers us off. So nothing going there into the final corner, into turn 27. But we're going to get a third dose of DRS here down the pit straight. And here we come on the Haasman. Up for P8. We're going to go down the outside. Even with the DRS open, we don't really have a massive straight line advantage. We have to turn back out of the corner as Magnussen sends it back down the inside. But that is going to give us the move. Up into P8 and back to where we were running for a lot of the race. As we flick it through turn 1 now, we've got another 2 seconds to gain on George Russell. But we were making 2.5 seconds of gain earlier in the race when we were both on the medium tyres. Now we have the rubber advantage as well, so unless he's found a way to work around that engine issue or somehow got over it and managed to fix it, maybe it was something with the electronics. But here on the next lap here, on lap 21, we're just within a second now of Russell. Really pushing the car, but we just drop out of DRS range just on the exit of the hairpin here. Russell just gets a better exit, carries more speed, which is pretty impressive on those hard tyres, really showing the strength of the Mercedes car compared to ours. And in the gap now up to 1.1, but we get a really good drive through that chicane. The soft tyres allowing us just to get the nose in to both apexes really easily. And you see Russell still definitely carrying this issue, because even without the DRS, and even without dragging this car is, we're going to take almost 3 tenths out of him down that straight, kind of a straight, and get DRS here for the end of lap 21. As right in front of us here, we see Hamilton and Alonso. Hamilton goes deep into turn 27, and again Alonso is going to capitalise on a mistake from a Mercedes. He has to tuck in, but comes straight back out again with that DRS open. Going to be side by side down into turn 1, but Alonso's got enough ahead that he manages to cut back in front of the 7-time world champion. These two still a bit of needling maybe from when they were teammates in 2007. And that's going to put the Alpine up into P5. On lap 22 now, we're so much closer to Russell through the hairpin. Tyres getting up around about 30% wall, so they're past their best, but they should still be better than 10-lap-old hard tyres, running on that Mercedes. But George gets a really good line through that chicane, but now we've got the triple dose of DRS to drag us closer to this Mercedes car with engine troubles. So he's not going to be as quick in a straight line or off the corners as he would be normally. Close the gap down to under half a second, a really good line through the chicane. We managed to cut really tight there while still carrying a lot of speed through the fast parts of the track, and we're going to come up right behind on George Russell now. We're going to try a move on the outside again into turn 27, but Russell does the same as Magnussen. Manages to close that move off, manages to just shut the door, not leave us space. So here now we're going to get a better drive, hopefully, down into turn 1. Will this third chunk of DRS get us close enough? As Mark just mentions about the fuel, but we've got an extra tenth of a lap here, so we should be fine to the end, go flat out. And we're just half a second behind George Russell. But now on to the end of lap 23. Hamilton and Alonso still doing battle ahead of us. If these two have any kind of contact and anyone gets damaged, that's going to be a free place for us. As the 7-time world champion looks towards the outside, fakes Alonso to go down there and dives it down the inside of turn 1. He's going to hang it around the outside of turn 2, Lewis Hamilton. Just about stays out of the wall. Alonso gives him exactly a car width of space, and he doesn't need a second invitation to take it. Down into turn 4, Hamilton's backed out of here before, but he's going to hang it around the outside of turn 5. And he manages to squeeze through. A great move from Lewis Hamilton in sector 1. And that's going to put the Mercedes back up into P5. As now on the end of lap 24, so just one more full lap to go after this. We're on the back of George Russell. It's now or never. We have to make this move. We've used most of our battery, but Russell's still carrying that engine issue. Again, closes off into turn 27, goes a little defensive, and we get a better exit this time. No squirreling around from the rear end. And this third dose of DRS, along with whatever we've got left of our battery, is what we're going to have to spend to get around the outside of the Mercedes driver into turn 1. I didn't think we'd be fighting Mercedes this early, but we get ahead enough into the corner that we can turn in, take our apex. That's going to give us P7. But George Russell isn't too far behind. He's not going to let this go without a fight. As we get a little wide on the entry to turn 1, these tyres definitely past their best here. And Russell's going to close right up behind us, just 2/10 the gap. As we come to the end of sector 1, we run a little wide over the exit curb. We've already got 2 warnings. We can't afford another. Had to back off that. And Russell's going to get down the inside into the chicane. Into the hairpin. We left him room and he's taken it. Didn't need a second invitation there, even in his first season in a front-running car. And that's going to give Russell the place back. We need to make the most of these DRS zones, but we just don't have the ERS anymore. Russell gets a great exit, and he's going to deploy whatever he's got left of his battery as we're going to run down here. You see the flight flashing on the back of our car, and just not enough to get close to the Mercedes, but we've got at least one more go into turn 27. If we can get a good flick here through the quick corners under the hairpin, under the hotel, sorry, I should say, and chasing George Russell here around this final real turn, and we're just not close enough. That Mercedes has somehow found a bit of pace, even carrying the engine issues. And we don't get a perfect exit out of 27 to possibly challenging him to the line. A big kick of oversteer, but it's going to be P8, which is much better than I thought we'd do. It's not a result to be disappointed with, but P7 was right there in front of us. It was so tempting, but Max Verstappen gets driver of the day, even after his engine penalty, managing to get up on the podium.
As we reflect on the team's impressive performance today. Well, Anthony Davidson, a resounding victory today, but what set them apart from the rest?
Well, this was a real team victory. They put together a solid strategy today that appeared well suited to the conditions out on track. The driver did everything that was expected of them in the moment to really execute the team's plan to perfection. A shining example of how F1 really is a team sport.
And here we are, a team that is no stranger to the podium, taking their place on top once again. A sublime race today, and a stunning win for Ferrari.
So Charles Leclerc takes victory in a Ferrari 1-2. That's a great result for the Scuderia. Max Verstappen managed to hold him off in Bahrain, but with that engine penalty, no chance of that happening here. 23 seconds in the end, the margin over the Red Bull driver, the reigning world champion. Lewis Hamilton did manage to maintain P5 ahead of Fernando Alonso, just 0.3 of a second. And we were just half a second behind George Russell in P8, but it's 4 points for our team. Marcus managed to make his way up to 14th from almost the back of the grid. And that's going to give him maybe a bit more focus, managing to make up a few places. He just needs to nail qualifying. If he can do that, it's going to be extremely helpful to him possibly gaining points. They see now up into P10 in the Drivers' Championship with those 4 points we've gained there. And we'll be hoping to kick on in the next round when we move to the revised Albert Park circuit in Melbourne in Australia, for what proves to be potentially another great race, and possibly the first race of the season, which might be a little weather affected. So that's going to end it there for Season 1 episode 2 of My Team from Jeddah. A great result there from us. Remember to check us out for the next race from Australia. I've been Zeke, and thanks everyone for watching.